So are you sick of multiverse movies? Tough titties! Because I've got another one for you. This one is called Black and it's from India. And it is apparently a loose remake of a Western movie that had come out, I think, in the last 10 years or so. And it's effectively a kind of multiple reality style movie. It focuses on a married couple who are going through a little bit of a tough time, and they have planned to go to like a newly constructed like holiday village, like a number of villas in this kind of gated area, and they happen to be going there at the time of this supermoon, and they're the only ones actually in this complex of villas, or at least they think they are. And when they end up going there, the strange phenomena seems to happen. There seems to be other people that are in these villas that they shouldn't be. But upon closer inspection, it actually appears to be them, these same people, are living in these other villas and are repeating events that they have already happened or will happen. And not to put a too fine a point on it, we are looking at a time loop / kind of multiple reality style situation here. Our husband ends up kind of losing track of his wife, and can he find her again? Do things spiral out of control? You have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss. So I've not seen the original movie that this is apparently based on, although it's somewhat of an unofficial remake, you might say. So how does this one do? It's quite a complex and weaving plot. I don't want to give away too much in regards to the narrative. Suffice to say, in regards to the title Black, what that's referring to is there are these sort of areas that seem to be blacked out like this, where the lights don't work, and these are sort of wormholes, really, or little gateways to other timelines. And one of the interesting things this movie suggests is that multiple realities, exist, and you as a person might actually straddle different realities. You might actually travel between a different timeline that could have a different set of circumstances, but you would never know because you have nothing to compare it to. And what this movie is kind of saying is this is showing you all of these kind of, or at least some of these realities on top of each other, so you have a point of comparison, and that's the kind of the crux of the story. But I found it an interesting sort of hypothetical that we could be, switching timelines but never actually knowing it, because we don't have the comparison, we don't have the kind of the overview of these different timelines kind of running parallel to each other. But what if we did, and we could kind of see some of these other ones? So I found that quite an interesting kind of premise, a kind of neat science fiction idea. And this movie is, as it goes along, there's more layers that are unveiled, and we learn more about our kind of characters and the dangers that this might kind of put one in. And there's a kind of like a ramping of the tension as they're trying to kind of figure out how they are going to kind of get out of this mess, and things keep tending to spiral as tensions are frayed. There's even a suggestion this could all be a figment of some drug kind of infused hallucination, potentially. As an alternate explanation here. So I think it's got a complex but interesting premise here. Like I've said, maybe it's not original if this is actually a kind of somewhat of a remake, but nonetheless, in itself, I think it's an interesting idea here, and it's kind of one of these I guess harder science fiction movie. It's a kind of has a sort of spooky, ominous feel to it. It's all set in this kind of one night and with this supermoon. So the cinematography here is the external shots are for the most part all shot in a kind of night shoot. So it has a sense of you don't know what's going on too far in front of you, and this kind of ominous flashing of the lights and things on this darkness, which are kind of areas of darkness in this kind of movie, give it a, it's not a horror film, but it has somewhat of a aesthetic which is more kind of akin to a horror film in kind of some ways. So that was kind of pretty good, and I think the movie does a good job of layering in more elements as the sort of film goes on, to make you kind of more interested, the stakes higher as the sort of the movie progresses. It is a foreign language movie, so again, it's always somewhat hard to completely judge our performances. But I thought the performances were quite good, because you did get the sense of this growing sort of panic, and really the sort of, as the situation dawns on our characters, and they are starting to kind of get a grips more with what's actually happening, and the mess that they're in and how they're going to get out of it. You do get that sort of sense of oh God, what are you going to do? And panic to a large degree. And I thought the performances showed that, even though I couldn't hear what they were saying in regards to the language I was reading the subtitles, I thought, it's a good representation of the emotional beats that is supposed to be kind of going on. The movie isn't like visually especially flashy, but I think it has that some interesting visuals in regards to all of these like buildings, all of these houses looking the kind of the same, that gives it this kind of like Matrix-esque kind of feel to it. With this endless kind of buildings and houses that just kind of look the same and kind of going on for infinity, I think works well. So you have a sense of that kind of that science fiction without really going into kind of especially sort of visual sort of science fiction in regards to what's happening on screen. There are a few other elements that this movie tries to kind of add in to make it, have a little bit more character development, I suppose. So you kind of get a sense of kind of who these sort of characters are, but reveals do happen as the film goes. On a technical level, it's kind of pretty solid. As I say, I think the use of kind of light here is very good, light and darkness, to illustrate this kind of sense of isolation. The soundtrack was pretty good, the audio was all fairly good, so it's solidly made in regards to its technical abilities. So what doesn't work? I think this movie is takes its time to get going. It's about 2-hour runtime, but we don't really start getting into the crux of the story until about 45 minutes into the movie. And prior to that, there seems to be a lot of elements that are introduced that seem unnecessary. We have 45 minutes of character build-up. We have, for example, our main characters seem to have a little bit of an antagonistic relationship with this other guy that he kind of bumps into, and they end up kind of having a little bit of a scuffle, and he's like reoccurring for the kind of like the first 3/4 of an hour, and then we don't see him again. So it kind of feels pointless. I think the idea here was for him to think that this guy was doing something, but it seems a lot of screen time to kind of give that. Really doesn't doesn't kind of end up with anything. We have a kind of a weird dance number, and I guess when we are talking about an Indian movie, there is only one, but yeah, we have this kind of dance number in this sort of the first 45 minutes, and we're introduced to quite a few additional characters that we never really going to see again, or see very much of. And again, there's that first 45 minutes, I have to say, it feels like it's going nowhere. And when you kind of add that to the kind of the runtime, the movie kind of feels stretched. I'm assuming that they just wanted to have a sort of different type of visuals or something like that, but it kind of stretches out this movie and makes it feel a little bit kind of like long, and quite frankly sometimes a little bit sort of dull, where you're not really caring necessarily what's kind of going on screen. Now, outside of that, when we kind of get to our time loopy parallel dimension kind of situation, I feel some of the characters' actions that takes place seemed unnecessarily aggressive, and you know, in these sort of things, you think, what would you do in this situation? And without sort of spelling out plot points for you, I don't know if the situation's really called for the amount of aggression that we actually see play out, especially when your characters have a gist of the idea about what's kind of going on. It just seemed unnecessarily making characters seem antagonistic to one another. When they were really, I don't think it would really happen like that, if that makes sense. There are also some decisions here where I thought, you know, when you have an idea that you're living in this reality where there's now multiple versions of you, you know, why aren't you kind of out in the street and, you know, I'm here in the middle of the street, let's all come and try and sort of brainstorm a way out. And nothing like that really ever happens. All of these sort of couples that are in this now one reality try and sort of avoid each other to a degree, and again, it doesn't really give you any reason why that is. Maybe outside of budgetary reasons, we get a couple of instances where we get a bit of crossover, but then it ends up in this sort of antagonistic force, and it's like, well, I don't know if that would happen like that. So I think this movie is a little bit guilty of inflating drama for having drama's sake, both in this kind of the preamble in the first 45 minutes, where I felt like it didn't really need this kind of like antagonistic relationship with this random bloke, and then we have I don't know, unnecessarily aggressive decisions made by characters or and things, even when they have an idea about what is kind of going on. And to me, it made the decisions made just didn't seem logical to me, and it's just like it's clear that they want the story to go in a one particular way without really having it too much sense sort of put into it. Now, I will say as well, I don't know if the plot made an entire lot of sense, and we don't really get a massive explanation about the reasons for this. We get a brief bit of exposition, but never about the hows really and all of that sort of stuff. It's a little bit just kind of like sort of brushed over. I think if you're interested in multiversal stories, it has an interesting idea, and I think it's well played out, certainly on a technical level. I don't know if the story was really as good as it could have been, but it's certainly watchable, if not a little bit overdrawn and a little bit overstuffed. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.